All right, I'm
Okay.
gonna turn it over to
Take
Tricia.
it
She has a
away.
better voice than I do.
Yeah.
Wendy and I probably will do most of the talking, but Wendy and I are going to share a little bit. I'm sure she'll add some content as we go through. We do have a PowerPoint presentation this year on the budget, so
Woo-hoo.
pretty excited. It was a
Look
team
at you.
effort, very team effort between Wendy, Tiffany, and I. So I'm pretty excited about it actually. So this is our preliminary budget. So I'll go over the budget highlights. So for operating revenue, our Sanderson Field and Johns Prairie revenues are budgeted to increase approximately 5% overall. Some contributing factors to this increase are the annual escalations of our current leases. Those leases run between 2.5% and 3% typically in those in the set leases that we have. Our land rate increases due to the market study that was recently done, and also future tenancies based on completion of construction projects, specifically the Olympic Mountain occupancy. Hopefully that will be ready and available March, April of next year, roughly. Our hangar revenues are budgeted to increase approximately 6% to stay consistent with market value. On our operating expenditures, we're estimating about an 8.5% increase in port operating expenses. Some of the factors that contribute to that are increases in wages to stay consistent with the market, employee performance, and to maintain retention. 9 to 10% increase in our health and wellness benefits, our PEB medical insurance. We just was hot off the press. I think last Friday they released those rates, so I was actually thrilled to see only a 10% news out there. I was actually going to budget a 15% because that sounded like that was what was going to happen amongst the market.
Wow.
I've had other ports in our finance group that have reported that are not through PEB that they were getting 20% increases. So I feel pretty fortunate that we're in that 9 to 10% range. Other factors that contribute to that increase is we are upgrading our water meters at Sanderson Field. This year through HD Fowler, we're purchasing a new water meter. Our water meters are pretty antiquated, I think. These water meters, we will have basically a smartphone or a device that will actually electronically read that meter. So it'll be really less labor associated with that, but we'll be able to we're hoping and anticipating be able to be on top of leaks a little bit quicker, get some information feedback quicker than we have in the past. The one thing with this system is we'll actually have a software that will take that data and we'll be able to get much quicker feedback when we read the meters. So,
Well, and if you think about our process, currently has been one of our maintenance crew driving to the meter, getting out of their truck, looking at the meter, writing down the number, doing this several times over, and then bringing that in a written thing where then a staff member here keys that in. So there's a lot of human error possibility as well. So
This is just like a lot of the municipals where they can drive
It
by, point it at it, and it picks it up, and then that just
exactly
gets
what we're
downloaded
moving
in the
to.
office.
yeah.
Yeah, the city of Shelton does that now.
Yeah. So we're hopeful and looking forward to that. But we did replace. We haven't received them yet, but Johns Prairie. That's kind of our test run on those. So we're excited about it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to mention on our expenditures, we are set to have a federal single financial audit next year due to the 2025 expenditures in excess of $1 million on federally funded projects, which is the FAA taxiway project. So hopefully, our plan is and the goal is to expend the majority of that project in 2025, so we only have to do one year and not roll over to another year. So just the cost is what adds to that to the state. I mean, we're looking at I don't have an estimate from them, but roughly 15,000 I think is what we're estimating. That's quite a bit of money, but So non-operating revenues, our revenue is the revenue that comes in from our non-operating side is primarily tied to the 2026 capital facilities plan. These are grants, loans, the curb loans, insurance recoveries, so that's why our non-operating revenue tends to be escalated a little bit more for 26. We are budgeting for the 1% tax levy increase. We also have a line item in there on a proceeds on sale of assets which are tied to our capital budget expenditures, which is we're looking at possibly a sale of 3 acres and upgrading some maintenance equipment that's exceeded its useful life. So we're going to sell or surplus the equipment and then turn around and reinvest that in new equipment in the future, hopefully. So,
And I think you guys all know we've talked enough times about exploring the sale of 3 acres for potential hotel development.
Mhm.
yep. And non-operating expenditures, our principal portion on our long-term debt and the interest expense on our long-term debt will decrease in 2026. Primarily due to a 2005 general obligation debt that was paid in full this year. And we are not anticipating any new curb debt payments until 2027.
Oh.
So we'll be
That's a break.
drawing those loan funds in 26, and then repayment won't start until 2027.
Okay.
And then also, of course, the biggest chunk on our non-operating expenditures are our purchase of capital assets, which are identified in our capital facilities plan. Next. So I have a little chart this year that looks at how to get rid of that top. Yeah. So this is our total, the top says total, 2026 total budgeted revenues. So this is all of our revenues anticipated for 2026 in basically a pie chart. When I showed this to Wendy, I'm like, this really kind of looks wonky for 2026 because we have so many different component parts. Typically, our operating revenue, like our Sanderson Field and Johns Prairie operating revenue, would take up half of that pie chart typically. But because we've got the insurance recovery revenue, we've got curb loan and note revenue coming anticipated for 2026, grant revenue, that all takes a little chunk out of that pie. And you can see our tax levy revenue with the 1% increase is about 8% of our overall revenue for next year.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So next year I want to do this again. It'll be interesting
Right,
to
should be
see
seated,
because
yeah.
it should be dramatically different for
I don't know what I
27.
did, but now I can't.
Oh, no.
There it goes.
So here's the pie chart on our 2026 total budgeted expenses. And you can see our capital asset expenditures are going to be, well, we're budgeting $9.4 million, which is 77% of our total expenditures. The other largest part of our expenditures are our general and administrative expenditures of $1.9 million. That encompasses all of our insurance, our wages, our benefits, outside consulting services, a whole host of just general expenses that take to operate the port. This is our capital. This is what we're anticipating for our capital projects for 2026. The top section on this budget are our Sanderson Field projects. Now, we are budgeting $9.2 million of expenditures for our capital projects at Sanderson Field, and realistically, most of these we will utilize most of that budget because these are projects that have either just commenced or partway through. So we've already started these projects, so we're pretty confident that we'll be utilizing and expensing that much in our capital next year. So the way this chart looks is the blue portion is our funding that's coming from an outside funding source. So on our first two projects, the taxiway paving and the airport master plan, that's all FAA and WashDOT funding. And then the light blue is coming from Port Resources. And so we have the substation feasibility study. We're hoping to start that this year and just have a little residual left over for next year. On the taxiway and really the airport master plan, the taxiway should be substantially complete this year. That's just kind of residual closeout into 2026. The two big projects that we have going on are for next year, this building replacement project and then the Olympic Mountain ice cream project. So those again will start in the next month or so, or the next couple months. We'll be going out to bid with the Olympic Mountain ice cream. But those are the two big projects we have going on that take up quite a bit of that expenditure in our capital account. So when you look at Port Resources versus outside funding, one thing I want to clarify on this, so of that 9.2 million, 49% is coming from outside funding sources and 51% are Port Resources. There's a caveat to that. Of that 51%, 59% is from our insurance recovery money. So
Yes.
that is not necessarily, I mean, that's money in our account,
Yeah.
but it was specific from the insurance, and that's roughly $2.8 million. Under the SF miscellaneous, we do have a budget for potential land acquisition and improvements adjacent to runway 5. So hoping to, if the port moves forward and we have a buyer for 3 acres, reinvesting, I know that's been talked about in our meeting, reinvesting that into purchasing more property. So looking ahead, so on really for 26, Johns Prairie and just general routine capital or maintenance, port-wide projects, you know, we don't have a great budget. Really, these projects that we have going on in Sanderson Field is going to probably utilize all of our resources for next year. One chart that we don't have up here that we like to provide, I know in the handout that we sent, is our 5-year projection of capital projects. So I just want to briefly highlight some of the projects we have on that 5-year plan. So that would be, we're actually anticipating completion of the building replacement project into 2027. We'd like to purchase a backup generator for airport lighting. We have plans for office demolition and garage bay improvements at 410 Business Parkway, or Business Parkway, I think. There is a section of concrete that Brandon's talked about, which we call Sanderson Field Enterprise Loop Road Improvements. It's going out to the new building replacement.
Yeah.
So there's a section of roadway that needs to be
Yeah.
replaced and improved. A couple FAA and WashDOT funded projects that Brandon has submitted for funding. So we don't have confirmation that they will be funded, but at this point, we want to put that on our 5-year plan. A T-hanger taxi lane shift and extension project and a south connector taxiway project.
The taxiway, the south connectors to the former fairgrounds, and the taxi lane is right by the newest hangar that was built by Island Lake LLC. The FAA has a ranking of projects. They, of course, runways and taxiways are first, and then taxi lanes and different items, tarmac, come next. And so we're trying to adhere to that. They aren't super excited or anticipating wanting to fund those taxi connectors because they see a lot of availability to build projects around our current tarmac. And what we've insisted on is this was a very contentious issue with the fairgrounds and the force of closure of, the county walked away, then we closed, the space. It's for aviation. We said we were going to take down the buildings, and we lived to tell about that this, the community wants to see where's this, project that the FAA demanded? And so we keep telling them that, you can't not fund this, at least fund us getting there, and then hopefully an aviation related business will decide to build that out. But that's kind of what our thought process is. So, and they heard us. I mean, they heard us say those things and realized, why that's important to us. So
Build it and they will come.
yeah.
For Johns Prairie, on the 5-year plan right now, the water tower on the interior roof of the water tower really needs some significant maintenance, to the tune of about $250,000. So in our discussion, we're really hoping that we can get, hopefully 100% funded on that, but that we will be looking for outside funding to help fund that project. And then also, possible upgrades to rail. For port-wide projects, we've, again, hopefully surplusing some equipment and reinvesting. We're looking for a dump truck, a trailer, a backhoe, and still upgrading our administrative vehicle, which is not a huge priority at this point. I think we're, pretty stretched thin on our capital projects, so we've really felt like that is something that can be on hold for the time being. So that's looking 5 years out for us. Next. And then this is the numbers. This is what our preliminary budget looks like. So I am estimating beginning cash and investments on January 1 of 2026 to be $7,792,875. Our total operating revenues, which include Johns Prairie and Sanderson Field, $2,358,680. Our operating expenses, Sanderson Field, Johns Prairie, and G&A, totaling $2,350,530. So a net increase in our cash from operations of $8,150. Non-operating revenue, you can see non-operating revenue are debt proceeds, capital contributions from grants, interest income, property taxes, proceeds of sale of assets, insurance proceeds, totaling $9,264,100. And our non-operating expenses, which long-term debt, purchase of capital assets, and some interest expense of $9,875,883 for a net loss or net reduction in cash from our non-operating expense of $611,783. So this is a total decrease from operations and non-operations, decreasing our cash of $603,633, which would leave our ending cash and investments on December 31st of 2026, $7,189,242. So still pretty good, healthy balance in our funds, and really tackling some of our really big projects that we have going on. So
Yeah, just in summary, I guess, to spend, or to decrease cash just barely over $600,000 and do all that we're saying we're doing.
No
Yes.
kidding.
Is pretty amazing.
It is
And
really
still
amazing.
keep over $7 million in our bank account.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
pretty.
trying to figure that out.
And one
yeah.
thing I meant to, on that, one thing I forgot to mention, we talked about, Len was here at our meeting last time regarding Olympic Mountain, and we're not out to bid on that project yet, but the numbers are higher, and that's been that was discussed, that the port really wants to proceed with this project. So that takes, when I budgeted that project in our capital, that's taking that high estimate.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah,
that
could
very well
change.
could come in lower.
Right.
We just don't know until we actually get bids on that
Get it
project.
right,
So we might end up having to straddle part of that if it's over, right? We might have to pick up part of that if it's over, correct?
And that's what we're budgeting for.
Yeah, it just depends on,
Yep.
yes.
Okay.
It depends on what that looks like.
Right.
But really having the commitment to take that project on and the importance of that.
Right.
you know, I think it's always a little nerve wracking when you're talking about, not new construction, but you're really
Yeah.
remodeling, and that
Remodeling,
cost
yeah,
always seems
right,
to be
right.
higher than if, you
Right.
know, it's harder to
Build it
know
new,
those
yeah.
numbers, yes.
Right.
So I felt confident that I really should bid with that higher number that
Yeah.
the, construction estimator provided.
Mhm.
So that takes that into account, so thought it was worth mentioning. So that is our preliminary budget.
The 600 proceed on sale of assets,
Yes.
is that 5
That's
acres?
the 3 acres plus.
No,
Oh.
it's the 3 acres that
Okay.
we had appraised,
Right.
that we looked at.
Where's
you know,
that,
what if
that
up
capital
here
bill
on,
money? When that
we haven't
project's-
gotten it yet, so
No, but we're
yeah.
not putting it in a budget anywhere?
I don't know when it's gonna come to be. I mean, it's
Okay.
through phase 4 of
Okay.
that project,
Yeah.
so yeah, I can't get a good
Okay, so it's
idea
not on
of,
here at all?
so
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
You
And
know,
that
and I
was
think when that-
750,000,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if and when that comes to be.
Big
Yeah,
amount.
I mean, we're
Yeah.
not at this point, how many
Yeah.
years has it
Yeah.
been?
Right.
And I
Right.
think, you know, just because it's not specifically in the budget, it all be done by action of the commission anyway, right?
right.
Like, our budget is just a working,
Okay.
it's a working document, really.
Okay.
So.
Nice.
Any specific questions? I do have one last slide I think is fun to show that you guys may not have seen. So the Office of the State Auditor puts out on their website, they have what's called a financial intelligence tool,
Oh, yeah.
which is very interesting to explore. This is kind of a screenshot of what Shelton's front page looks like. They say that we have good financial indicators, financial health on our cash balance, sufficiency, our change in cash position, and an enterprise self-sufficiency. The rankings on the right tell you where you are ranked amongst all the port districts.
Oh.
So we're 33 in our revenues amongst 79 port districts, which was higher
Mhm.
for 2024 than the prior year. That's what that arrow indicates.
Oh, okay.
34 for expenditures and 27 of tax revenues.
Wow.
When you go to the page, you want to try and do it? Do you
Mhm.
try and link it? So anyone from the public can go to sao.wa.gov, and there is, oh, darn it. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Underneath the control.
So this is linking straight to the Port of Shelton page that we have. Really
Filed on time, past
interesting.
9+ years.
Yeah. Filed on time. So this gives us our because we've filed 2024 and they've uploaded that information. So this kind of gives your financial summary, revenue, and expenditures. If you click on the rankings to the right, so if Wendy clicks on revenue, let's say, it will sort the ports that are within your range, right? So there's number 31, 32, we're 33, 34. So it kind of tells you
Oh, yeah, who's
comparable
around you, yeah.
ports that are have the same revenue range that we do roughly.
Mhm.
Same thing for expenses and so on. So it's kind of been interesting.
Yeah.
SAO has really been pushing this quite a bit. You can compare specific ports if you want to compare. There's an area on here that you could mark the box and then get the data to see where we are compared to them. You know, to see if we are on, target. What was the one we were looking at earlier that we thought was interesting amongst, I don't remember now.
Go back.
Yeah, go back one page.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, we might not get there. Can't remember what that was you were looking at. Oh, no,
boy.
oh no, we lost it. Anyway, so it's kind of a fun website to look at if you're curious about what other ports are doing, similar to our size. And so yeah, it's very interesting.
It doesn't want me to go backwards.
Okay, well,
Sorry.
that's okay. More to come on that later.
Yeah.
So that is the preliminary budget, and again, October 7th, we'll do the final hearing, unless I hear some feedback about specific items in the budget. What you see in this preliminary budget will likely be what's presented to the public and to the commission on October 7th.
Okay.